Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ThatOneSecGuy's podcast. Friends, today we are diving deep into the world of threat hunting with someone who does it day in and day out, Mr. Subhash. Subhash is an expert threat hunter who's like a digital Sherlock Holmes, sniffing out hidden threats before they can wreak havoc. He has a wealth of experience in uncovering IoCs, forensics, and everything in between. And he also very recently came in the top 5 rankings in the forensics ETF at the MSRC's Blue Hat India 2024 conference. So, welcome to the show, Subhash. How is it going?
Thank you, Harshil, for the warm introduction and for the warm welcome. It's going great, buddy. How's it going with you?
It's all right. I think it's almost past 9 o'clock here. Lovely time
Yeah.
for us to be able to do some of these things off work. And
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. So, folks, get ready for some serious knowledge bombs as we explore this fascinating world of threat hunting, right, with Subhash. And also watch this video till the end to find out about more of a rapid fire session that we will have with Subhash. Right. Okay. So let's jump in. So Subhash, we know cybersecurity threats are everywhere these days, right? And staying ahead of them is super crucial. But for listeners who might be new to the concept, can you explain what threat hunting is all about and why it's so important?
And I think I'll think of it this way, right? Now you have folks who kind of are going to look for threats in the
Hmm.
network. Those are ideally called the threat hunters. Now, I wanted to make this as easy as possible for anyone who want to get into the world of threat hunting.
Hmm.
And that's a very simple definition. But when you kind of look in depth, what is a threat? Anything that is kind of posing a risk to your organization or to the safety and security of your users or to your employees. It's ideally what we consider as threat in information security, nomenclature. Now, it can range from anything to a hygiene issue, something like a weak password or a weak password policy as well,
Hmm.
to a point where you identify a threat actor who is kind of doing a whole lot of bad stuff, like dumping memory with mimikatz and stuff like that. It, it,
Hmm.
it can be anything in between, right? So
Right.
the idea is it is very broad, and for a reason. The idea is not to restrict and say, hey, you're going to do hunting, or what is hunting? Like you go and find needle in a haystack. That is what hunting is all about. You go after the bad guys, you go after their behaviors, you go after their toolkits and stuff like that. That is what threat hunting is all about, at least in the information security arena.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So, when red teamers or even actual attackers, they use these kind of C2 infrastructures, there must be some sort of tools that threat hunters are using, right? Like indicators of compromise or IOCs. And then there's also indicators of attack or IoAs for short, right? And if I'm not wrong, Subhash, these are like the digital footprints of malicious activity, right? So, before we delve deeper, can you break down for our audience what IOCs and IoAs are? And if you can share some examples and how they have helped identify potential threats?
See, I think I'll take an example. Now imagine, you're going after terrorists or you're going after thieves, right? Uh,
Hmm.
IOCs are something which is like a photograph, which is like a fingerprint, maybe other stuff around. Hey, this is the exact height of the person, or this is the exact dress that a person wears, or this is kind of a dress that a person wears, right? And think of IOA as the modus operandi of that particular attacker. Now, if you kind of want to catch serial killers, or if you want to catch people who do robbery and whole lot of stuff, attribute a robbery to a particular guy, you would actually follow a combination of both. You would follow, their probable attire and stuff like that, and then you also look at the behavior that actors like do. Take an
Hmm.
example of maybe someone robbed some famous celebrity's house.
Hmm.
Um, Now, if you want to secure everyone else around in the same colony, One, you would go ahead and say, hey, we've seen this particular person's photograph in our
Mhm.
CCTV camera, and you're going to circulate that photo across, like if you're a police
Right.
officer.
Mm.
And then obviously you're also going to see that, hey, generally the celebrity's house is kind of relatively very secure than a normal person's house. But the
Mm.
reason why probably the attacker broke in, or the way in which the attacker broke in, was because the screws on a particular window were actually very weak. So you would say, hey, go and check everywhere where the screws of the windows are weak, because
Mm.
that is where the attacker is going to hit. Now, obviously, this doesn't just come up with a single attack. This happens over a period of time, and you keep on evolving over a period. You try to model a particular modus operandi after a threat actor
Mm.
using a series of events. Now, taking the same example into the real world, think of any attack that is happening right now, and like I can take an example of the red team example that you're talking about. One red team example would be the C2 IP is going to be an IOC,
Mm.
but on the other hand, the usage of a particular C2 can actually be an IoA, or
Mm.
combination of usage of a particular C2 plus post-compromise activities such as maybe usage of log bins for reconnaissance, or maybe persisting using startup folders, or maybe persisting using a specific set of registry keys and then exfiltrating over OneDrive or exfiltrating over Google Drive
Mm.
is a series of TTPs or
Mm.
techniques that will kind of give you a sense of, hey, this is an indicator of attack, because this is gonna give you an understanding of, okay, these are the attacks, a series of attacks that would happen, right? And the most important thing that we need to understand is, if you get an IOC hit, you're definitely already compromised. Like, there is most likely, you got to engage your IR and stuff like that, right? There are obvious deviations to that, but in general, if you get an IOC hit, you engage IR, or at least you sort of initiate the process of incident response.
Mm.
However, on the other hand, if you get an indicator of attack, there is a good chance that it might be false positive. At the same time, this can be a legitimate activity as well. In certain cases, we have seen, like instance in lol bins, reconnaissance using lol bins, a
Mm.
lot of software that, we kind of actually keep on telling us that, I mean, there's no reason why on planet Earth that a software is actually really going after the behavior of an attacker and is actually replicating the behavior of an attacker, right?
Right.
That being said, IOAs are really important because
Mm.
IOCs can easily change, but IOAs, it's very hard to change. And one very good example is maybe a usage of a C2 plus usage of these things are pretty much going to be standard, because it takes a lot of time for the attacker itself to kind of change to a new behavior, change to a new set of techniques to
Mm.
establish that attack path, right? Now, because a lot of these advanced persistent threats actually have a lot of automated tools in place and a lot of automated infrastructure deployment in place. With automated infrastructure deployment, it's actually very easy to change IP addresses, very easy to change virtual private machine, virtual private servers, and stuff like that. And with the advent of cloud, I mean, I can get an IP for every 5 minutes, right?
Of
So,
course.
and at a very, very cheaper cost.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to mention proxies, VPNs. I mean, the list is endless. That is why today, sort of IOCs are often looked down to some extent.
Mm.
There is mixed reaction in the industry right now, but I think both have their own place with respect to I mean, both have their own importance and both have their own use case. And I feel, if you're a CISO, or if you're someone who leads a detection strategy in your company, I think you should have a combination of both of them and not just a single one.
Okay. Okay. So, coming from a red teaming background myself, I wanted to ask you something like I would personally ask you if I met you in person. Is that like when I use techniques like domain fronting and all for my C2 infrastructure, does that make a day harder for you as a threat hunter?
See, I think I'll tell you, this is something that my manager who hired me at Microsoft told me, right? Um, there are two things, two sides of the story. One is, as a defender, you have thousand, places where you need to put your hand and you need to say, I'm not gonna let you in, right? Like, think of it like a dam with holes. I need to put my hands in 1,000 places. But
Hmm.
for a red teamer, all you need to do is just find that one hole where my hand is not there or where I've not protected it, right?
Hmm.
At any day, like at any point in time, I've been a red teamer before and I've been a blue teamer now. I'm a blue teamer now. Um, I'll say any day my job as a red teamer was always easy, right? Because there were hundreds of attacks which were not just discovered by me, but they were posted online. Like on Twitter, people keep on telling me that, hey, when
Hmm.
domain fronting came in, like Amazon, was kind of I'm not say vulnerable, but I'd say Amazon was kind of facilitating domain fronting, right? Amazon services.
Right.
And then and for a brief point, Azure was supporting domain fronting, and there were other services like StackPath, which we were using left, right, center in every red team engagement. We used to be like, hey, let's just use it. It's server bypass. You don't even have to worry about network restrictions anymore. But on the other hand, as a blue teamer, I used to often say, hey, you guys are not really catching it up, right?
Hmm.
But being a blue teamer, I will not say my life is harder right now, but I would simply say it's a bit challenging, but it's challenging in a good way.
Good
It's
sense.
not really the harder way, right?
Right.
Because I'll give you an example. Like if you in a very ideal world, not something that really happens on a daily basis,
Hmm.
but in a very ideal ecosystem, you have all the logs available with you. Like you have process execution logs, you have every request that is actually sent out of the machine, including the header information and stuff like that. But it doesn't really happen in real world. In 90% of the cases, it doesn't really happen, right? First thing.
Hmm.
And second thing is, with the available logs, what is the best defense strategy that you can have, right? That is
Right.
what we should always be looking at. And the most important thing that I understood as a red teamer and then subsequently got it validated as a blue teamer
Hmm.
is you cannot catch or you cannot prevent 100% of the threats that are out there. Like today, someone says we can bypass XDRs through ETW, or we have ETW tracing, but we can bypass it. Or
Hmm.
we have DLL hooking. We say, hey, we unhook that particular DLL. Or
Right.
we're gonna do a whole bunch of techniques and just we're gonna bypass everything that's out there, right? But
Hmm.
on the other hand, when you kind of see the larger picture, you're kind of seeing a very minute attack as a single isolated piece, which is not right. But if you kind
Hmm.
of see the larger picture, like think about an attack path.
Part.
First a C2 comes in. After the C2 is there, you got to do certain activities. Now, I would simply say, if you need to ransom a particular company, if you want to put a ransomware, there's a good chance that you'll have to delete violent shadow copies.
Hmm.
That's kind of like a mandatory thing as far as as far as my memory serves me right. Now there are a lot of like chicken necks everywhere
Hmm.
across the attack chain, and if you're able to detect those sort of things, then I believe your detection strategy is at least decent. Now when your detection strategy is decent or your hunting strategy is decent, that's when you go and try to be mature. Like
Hmm.
when you are mature, you try to detect stuff like domain fronting and stuff like that.
Right.
Now, again, one very good example is data exfiltration. At the end of the day, either a company has to get ransomed or a company has to have their data exfiltrated, or even both, if you
Hmm.
kind of see what is happening right now. And if you simply just look at the amount of data that is going out of your network, if
Hmm.
you do a simple process correlation or a file lineage analysis, along with the amount of data that is leaving your network, you're stopping data exfiltration. But does it really happen in the real world right now with the existing telemetry? I mean, to a partial extent, I would say no. But I mean, all the more reason to actually have this job, because there are some challenging problems which needs to be solved, and
Of
we need
course.
bright people, on the side of the house as well.
Of course. Right. So, threat hunting, it really does sound interesting, but all the more complex as well, right? And this actually brings me to a question. Since you were talking about the detection of IOCs and how you can rebuild the whole attack path. So let's say this is the attack path, right? And this is where is the first IOC found. Now, what is your process as a security investigator? Like, do you trace downwards or do you go upwards? how do you know what the process is in order to be able to recraft that entire attack path that actually happened?
See, I think there are two things over here which I mean, a lot of people, it's mostly a controversial opinion, but there are two kind of things that we kind of look at, like two category of items that we kind of look at when we are hunting, right? One is a proactive side of the hunting, and second one is a reactive hunting.
Mm,
Now, reactive hunting has a lot of overlap. Like, I mean, sometimes I just feel like, man, what is this? It's just investigation, right?
mm,
It's just a fancy buzzword for reactive investigations and stuff like that. But again, putting that aside, assume that you've got a IoC hit
mm,
on one of the node or one of these systems, for example. What we call is we call identifying the patient zero, or
mm,
identify the source of the attack. In
mm,
most of the cases, this might not be a responsibility at all. Your responsibility will only be identifying the threat and probably handing it over to investigation teams or handing it over to IR teams.
mm,
Once you know that there is a threat, you would probably hand it off to some other team which is going to take care of that. But in some cases, you are also responsible for, probably in especially in large scale incidents, you kind of have all the logs available with you, and you don't really need to hand it off to someone else. Or in some cases, in fact, when I was doing consulting, when I was kind of doing a lot of threat hunting engagements, I
mm,
was doing investigations as well. Like if I find something, I kept on, going backwards or kind of shifting left, to a point where I find patient zero and I report the patient zero that, hey, I found a patient zero, and this is the root cause of the infection,
mm,
right? So I don't really think of it like up or down or stuff like that, but I would see the horizontal plane where there is this node here. In fact, think of it like a timeline, right?
mm,
This is where you got an IoC hit, but there is a good chance that this machine, which is before this machine,
mm,
before this infection, something might have happened. My job to investigate and to find the patient zero is to go to the root cause of the investigation, to go to the first point where actually the infection happened in the
mm.
network, and probably what we call as an initial access point. It could
Right.
it could very well be a user, a very innocent user must have clicked on an email,
Mm.
downloaded a malware and stuff like that, or it could very well be that it's a
RCV.
cloud machine and someone did an RDP, right?
Right.
So that is the reactive side of the hunting ecosystem. And again,
Okay.
this is generally what happens on an incident, or when you're kind of working on like working to uncover a specific threat actor, or when you're hunting for a specific threat actor. But
Mm,
what happens on a proactive side is we typically get a lot of IOC hits and IOA hits on several machines, or
mm,
several. I'll not call it machines, but I'll probably generalize saying it nodes or elements in our particular scope, because cloud also sometimes is our scope, and physical machines are our scope. Cloud VMs are our scope, and Docker containers are our scope, and stuff like that. Now, in terms of that, we typically don't do this investigation that I kind of put forward. Like if
mm.
we got an IOC hit or an IOA hit, we just hand it off to other team who's going to take care of that. And that depends on individual company and how their playbook is built to. Because it's always a business decision. Business might think the threat hunters are probably way more experienced than some XYZ set of people, so let's not waste their efforts. They
Mm,
could think in this direction. But on the other hand, in a lot of firms, I've actually seen this, where threat hunters actually do this investigation as well,
mm.
which is not bad. I mean, there is pro and con to both of these
Both the
approaches,
sides.
but
Right.
it is just the way it is, right? And
Yes.
I've worked in both the environments, and both of them actually are equally, sort of. I mean, they teach you a lot, right? At the end of the day,
Mm.
that is what I look at. If you kind of are getting into a hunt, or if you kind of get into a investigation, what am I learning from that investigation? That is all I would probably look at.
Interesting. Interesting. So, we've talked about IOCs and we spoke about IOA, but I'm sure like threat hunters must be also having a whole toolbox of techniques at their disposal, right? Just like how attackers have some tools for reconnaissance, some tools for enumeration, etc. So, are there some other methods that are used to uncover hidden threats that might bypass traditional security measures apart from IOCs, IoAs that we already spoke about?
See, I think, I keep on telling this to people. As a threat hunter, I think fundamentally, if you are a threat hunter, you should start challenging your security controls on your environment.
Hmm.
Because in an ideal world, if your security controls are working, like if for example, if you're using Microsoft Defender, if you're using Microsoft Sentinel, and you're using Microsoft Threat Intelligence, all of them are great products, not gonna lie. But if you kind of are trusting that your products are actually the best in the world, there is no scope for improvement.
Hmm.
And that's what typically the detection side of the house is sort of what closely to a mode where, okay, we gotta trust our tools, right?
Hmm.
But as a threat hunter, you should never really have 100% I would
Faith.
say faith on these security controls. Or rather, like, probably faith is a maybe much harsher word, but I think maybe you should have an attitude of challenging your security controls. You should always think, what if a threat actor must have bypassed this? Because more
Got it.
often than not, as a threat hunter, if your job is to find what a security tool can actually find,
Hmm.
then I don't think you're actually doing any threat hunting. You're just probably doing manual job, which could either be accomplished by replacing your XDR or EDR, or it could just be replaced by some simple automation using SOAR tools, right? But
Right.
on the other hand, when you sort of challenge, when you sort of hypothesize that, look, the way in which I'm going to start is, what if my XDR is bypassed? What if, my network security controls are actually misconfigured? Now,
Hmm.
what if there is an alternative way to steal credentials? Because if you always think my anti-phishing system or my email gateway is so secure that no phishing email is going to enter, then you're probably thinking in the wrong direction, and you
Hmm.
wouldn't even appreciate the need for having a threat hunting team, right? And as a threat
Right.
hunter, you should always have that mindset. Now, the reason why I called it out is because as a threat hunter, I think you should be tool agnostic. You're like a doctor. Like, when you're a doctor, you can't just be like, give me this company injection or give me this company scissors, right? I can
Hmm.
only operate using these company scissors. Because more
Right.
often than not, I'm like, people come to me and say, hey, I know Kusto, I know Splunk,
Yeah.
can I be a good threat hunter? I'm like, sure. I mean, you can be definitely a good threat hunter, but the point is, I mean, you're not really, giving a lot of value, or
Hmm.
you're not really utilizing the best of your skills or best of your abilities if you're restricting yourself to a single tool.
Yeah.
Sure, hypothesize it. Like, what I would suggest is, for anyone who is probably doing threat hunting, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, because I've formed this notion over my years of experience doing threat hunting and failing detections. But if you're a threat hunter, start by hypothesizing that this is how an attack can happen, or these are the 10 ways in which an attack can happen.
Hmm.
And then, once you have these hypotheses, figure out what are the different ways in which you can find out if this happened or not. If you can validate, if you can accept your hypothesis, or if you can validate your hypothesis, or if you can invalidate your hypothesis. I'll give you one example. You could simply say password spray, credentials can be stolen using password spray.
Hmm.
If that is what you're saying,
Hmm.
using Entra ID or Okta or any other IDPs that are out
Yeah.
there. If
Yeah.
you're saying that this is possible through a specific technique called password spray, then
Hmm.
validate that technique, right? Look at the logs, because obviously, as a red teamer, you can always attack and say that that is possible. But as
Right.
a defender, you look at the logs and say, this particular user or one particular user or 10 particular users are getting a subsequent um, you know failed login attempts from a specific set of IPs or from a single IP.
Hmm.
And after that, you have a similar IP which is getting a successful login attempt
Right.
onto some other account, right? You have 10 accounts, which one IP is targeting 10 accounts, and 11th account, it was successful. There is no reason for that particular IP to actually talk to 10 accounts, 10 different
Hmm.
accounts.
Hmm.
Now, if that is true, then you've just validated your hypothesis. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, maybe some IDPs are actually configured against password stray, where if you just make 10, if you use the same IP to make 10 subsequent requests, it will simply mark your IP as a malicious IP or stuff like that, and then it is simply going to kill your sessions, or it is going to ask for a captcha and stuff like that. A basic rate limiting one-on-one. Now you wouldn't see it in your logs if this is happening. Now this is how you would go and validate in your logs. Now if the logs are in Azure Data Explorer, use Kusto. If your logs are in CSV or basically in Excel format, you can use simple pivoting inside Excel to even validate this hypothesis. You don't need a whole lot of Jarvis kind of AI tools to kind of validate your hypothesis, right? And almost all use cases are achievable through all these simple tools that are out there. But then one follow-up question would be like, Subhash, why do you think Kusto is better than any other language, or why Splunk is kind of Splunk query language, or the Kibana query language that is coming up, or ESQL, or Elasticsearch query language which is coming up, is kind of better than other stuff. Like, why do you need a query language? Now when you have 1 GB of logs, probably an Excel would work, or probably Excel would even crash with 1 GB of logs, depending on the configuration. Right. But if you talk about petabytes of data, talk about gigabytes of data, or talk about zettabytes of data in some cases, right? So how do you munch the data at scale? That is when these query languages do come handy. But it all depends on where your logs are, and are these logs available in a queryable format. That is all matters at the end of the day. If you kind of ask me the tools and techniques, I think the most important tool is log. Any log entry is basically a tool, and even bigger tool than that is your brain, actually, because it is what is hypothesizing all of that. The same thing actually applies to red teamers as well, right? Like, for instance, I've walked into environments where there were like everything was kind of like blacklisted. There was spy whitelisting in place. Then we've used techniques, because obviously our all current techniques were absolutely obsolete. Then we sort of used novel techniques to sort of identify how to spin up CMD and how to establish a trusted process lineage to ensure that this process which is spinning up, or which is spinning up, actually has a trusted image or trusted reputation before the XDR. So it's the same thing here. Like, as a red teamer, what are the tools you use? Any tool that helps you bypass. As a blue teamer, any log that can help you identify a threat actor.
Okay. Very interesting. And as we spoke, one of the things I couldn't help but observe was the irony of you wearing a blue and me wearing a red. Trust me, audience, this was not planned.
Yeah.
Right. So very interesting. But on the topic of what you just told, right? A very interesting thought that came to my mind is, tools are just there to aid you, but the ultimate power comes from your intuition that you develop, right?
Yes.
So you need to be able to think. There is certain level of guessing work, but it is informed guessing work, right? So intuition is definitely super important in threat hunting, but there is also a scientific side to it, right? So threat intelligence, for example, that helps to guide some investigations. So if we can, touch base on what kind of a role does threat intelligence play while you are going into an investigation of a case?
See, I think threat intelligence really helps you. It is like maybe think of it like a drone, flying above you, telling you where the attackers are, or where the attackers might be, or where, for example, you're running into a combing operation against attackers inside a forest. It will tell you where the forests are very dense, and if you have a previous knowledge that attackers can hide in dense forests, or where there are more dense forests, or maybe there are waterfalls, maybe there are rivers. For instance, you would just know from threat intelligence that that a specific threat actor is actually trying to target your organization. There are a lot of cases where we sort of like, I mean, this is not Microsoft, but this is me doing a lot of stuff on my own time, where I collaborated with a lot of threat intelligence researchers, where they just walked into dark web forums and they were discussing about, hey, how lucrative is targeting this company, right?
Wow.
And this is like basic one-on-one, right? There are instances like that. A lot of very
Telegram
crazy
groups as well,
stories.
right?
Absolutely.
The
And
Lazarus Telegram group.
absolutely, I mean,
Yeah.
you're spot on, right?
Yeah.
And more often than not, like these threat actor groups kind of brag about, taking down,
Hmm.
bigger companies, uh, and like, trust me, even those hours before the entire news breaks out into the media and it start going down, if you get that news that is more kind of helpful for us, even those hours actually matter a lot, right? And I've had a lot of encounters with with these kind of dark web intelligence, or I would say probably semi dark web, or the deep web intelligence, that as you can call it, which always helps you. Like it keeps you informed, as you mentioned, right? This is the more scientific way of hunting.
Yeah.
And like talking technically, for people who are already in threat intelligence or in threat hunting, they would more correlate to this. Because when you sort of are hunting for a threat actor, or when you know that you're like you have some instance of let's say, take Midnight Blizzard, right? Or any other Star Blizzard or Star or Tempest, or these sort of threat actors. When you know one of the IOC which is related to that particular threat actor has triggered in your environment, as an organization, what is the first thing that you would do? Sure, you would use a particular investigation process where you would start go back, start investigating each and every step. Also, what you would also do is you would know what you would see historically what this threat actor has done. Like historically, threat actor has a nature of running similar some kind of tools, or maybe threat actor is known to camouflage themselves through a set of IPs, or through a set of what we call as bulletproof hosting. So when stuff like that happens, when you know that these sort of things are behaviors exhibited by the attacker, you would then go and look at the IP logs, or basically the firewall logs, and you'd say, hey, out of all these IPs, how many of them are actually proxies? How many of them actually VPNs? How many of them belong to bulletproof hosting? Or how many of them are previously, or how many of them are resolving to a domain of a specific format, which happened with
Hmm.
Scattered Spider. One of the CISA advisory gave Scattered Spider users this sort of, a kind of a pattern for hosting. And a lot of companies have actually leveraged that intelligence after CISA did come out and say about it, right? So
Hmm.
this helps a lot. Like threat intelligence really helps a lot, and I would say this is kind of like a brother and sister relationship between threat intelligence and threat hunting, which
Of course.
is which is kind of going to help companies a lot.
Right. So it's an enabler for threat hunting.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. So,
spot on.
as a red teamer as well, some of the times I have to go to the dark web to find out what are the latest breach data available, right? And although
Yeah,
by downloading that breach data and trying to do a credential dumping, I might not get a success, and I'm not looking for a success. Very honestly, what I'm looking for as an attacker is what kind of passwords got breached. Is there any pattern to
yeah,
the passwords? Maybe a guy, let's call him Sam, right? So Sam had his password as password 123, and then he changed it to 456. It doesn't take much to figure out that it's going to be
yeah,
789 or something related.
yeah,
So those kind of patterns really help, and also it might help in identifying the patterns of the email addresses used. And yeah, I think it's very scary out there, but also pretty exciting times. Right. So, Subhash, it's been super interesting, but this could go on forever, and I really want to do the rapid fire session with you. I think
yeah.
we are going to get into that. So, if you're ready, right, for it.
Yeah, coffee with current vibes.
Yeah, you can grab your coffee if you want to.
No, I mean it's pretty late. I don't want to screw up my body.
Okay. All right. So, here we go. Question number one: Bash or PowerShell for initial threat hunting scripting, and why?
I think if it's Windows, it's gonna be PowerShell. If I'm on Linux, then it's gonna be Bash for sure. I mean, I don't want to put PowerShell onto a Linux machine. I don't want to put Bash onto Windows machine. I prefer having an WSL on a Windows machine. But yeah, there is no right or wrong for this. I think it's
Fair
more like
enough.
where you are.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Question two: Yara or Sigma for better rule development? Defend your pick.
I think Yara, if you're probably not very mature enough, like if you're starting in threat hunting, I think if you're not doing anything, uh, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you're not doing threat hunting or anything detection. Use Yara because that's the basic that you can do.
Hmm.
But if you're mature enough, if you're already using Yara, then probably I'll say, I mean, what's stopping you from using Sigma?
Okay. Okay. All right. So next one is an interesting one. What is your go-to source? Is it open source threat intelligence or commercial feeds?
Uh, well, I think, I mean, it depends on the commercial provider because I work with a fair amount of commercial providers. I don't want to name, I don't want to go behind, any one of the providers, but I think we have a very fair OSINT ecosystem as well. At least, I mean, I'm not a guy who's so heavy on threat intelligence, but when it comes to pivoting, infrastructure hunting, and stuff like that, OSINT really works. I mean, I don't really see a lot of value in commercial threat feeds,
Hmm.
but for a specific category of feeds, commercial feeds do really matter, like stuff like 0 days or stuff around Telegram groups, like stuff that we probably don't know about
Hmm.
because they kind of have dedicated infiltrate into these groups and stuff like that. So in general, I mean, my first pick would be OSINT, but yeah, I mean, if you're an organization and can afford a commercial threat feed, then please do go for it.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Next one is whether you would pick EDR as your weapon of choice or would you explore deception technology?
Oh, okay. I'm a very strong fan of deception.
Okay.
Uh, I, in fact, wrote two deception tools. Two of
Okay.
them kind of were presented at Black Hat Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm a very, very strong advocate for deception technology. But again, this is more like if you're not mature enough,
Hmm.
deception is not for you, because deception is costly to maintain. At times, it really does come with a little bit of overhead, little bit of maintenance, because you can't just have deceptive items for years together.
Hmm.
And sometimes you need to have deceptive items for years together. It generally depends, but if you're for starters, EDR, XDR, or whatever security tool that you want to. But if you're already mature, then go for deception.
Okay. I've used this particular tool called deploy deception, right? And
Yeah,
although I've used it just in like a lab environment, the idea of using it in enterprise networks seemed almost like an overkill if not done well, right? So
yeah,
that's my view on it. But yeah, let's get to the last question of
yeah.
the rapid fire session, right? So if you were hunting in containers, what would your focus be on? Would it be on the host or the container's image?
See, I think the focus would be on the host mostly because I would be more interested to see if a user or if a threat actor actually escaped from the container onto the host.
Hmm.
Because for me, that is the trusted boundary. That is a no-no for me because that happens. I'm gonna wake up the engineers from his bed, right?
Right, right.
But uh, that being said, there is an abuse side to the container story, right? Like, sure, like you're not escaping from a container, but you can use your container for as much amount of time as you want, unless you have an automated killing mechanism within the containers, right? Do DDoS or do coin mining or do whatever you want to. Uh, but that being said, I would say the host is going to be my focus, or rather, the link between the host and the container is going to be the focus.
Okay. So you target more into things that can cause a container escape or all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's been wonderful. I have one last question, right? So since we are on the topic of threat hunting, and as we are all aware that cybersecurity threats are so constantly evolving, so threat hunting really needs to adapt as well. And how do you see the field of threat hunting changing in the future? Like what new skills or techniques will become super crucial, with the rise of AI and all that coming in?
See, I think fundamentally, I would suggest to all my fellow threat hunters or people who are interested to, break into the field of threat hunting, uh, try to understand the underlying technology. and think like an attacker. That's what you kind of do on a day-to-day basis, being a threat hunter anyway. Because at the end of the day, today these sort of techniques that you kind of see on a host level, maybe you have 10 different techniques that kind of do come up,
Hmm.
and maybe on cloud you have 10 different things that do come up, and these keep on changing, because people are thinking more and more about, how else can I exploit, right? And well, I think my core focus would be to, again, to try and understand the underlying technology on which you're trying to hunt. Tomorrow, I mean, like with the advent of autonomous cars and stuff like that, if you're tasked to hunt on an autonomous car, like maybe Tesla, you should be able to do that, and you should not be
Hmm.
like, hey, I don't know how to do a threat hunt on a car, because all you have to do is think like an attacker. What would an attacker do if he got an access to a car, or if she got an access to a car,
Hmm.
through an unauthorized way? They would probably run it onto the side, or they would probably throttle, increase the throttle, or maybe disable certain security checks and stuff like that. Like, those are the things that you should be looking at, or ingress points. Like, for instance, maybe there is a USB port somewhere that people can insert and sort of start the diagnostics. If that USB port is kind of giving you the process of entry, or if it's giving you the initial access, then
Hmm.
you should be hunting there. You should be sort of checking about that at that particular place. Right? I think this is a very good example of, tomorrow you're tasked with a certain hunting of hunting on a specific technology, be it AI, be it autonomous cars, or be it any other system. You'll be able to do that, because all you have to do is take maybe a couple of days or a week time to try and understand how stuff works, and then probably go and hunt for it. Done. You're already done, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's what I would probably see, which is more important.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Subhash. That's a great insight, actually, coming from someone who has done this for a long time now. Lovely. As we wrap up this episode on threat hunting with Subhash, one thing is certain, which is that the cyber threat landscape is ever evolving. The future of threat hunting will likely involve a sophisticated blend of automation as well as human expertise. But one question that will remain is, will we always be one step ahead of the attackers? And that's a question to all of us to have to keep pondering upon. So thank you once again, Subhash, for sharing your insights and doing this. It has been a pleasure knowing and learning from you. I would also highly encourage our listeners to continue the conversation and share your thoughts on the future of threat hunting in the comments section.
Awesome. Thank you, Harshil. Pleasure talking.
Lovely. All right. And as always, if you have found this video informative, please do drop a like and subscribe to the channel as we bring in more such awesome podcasts to educate cybersecurity concepts. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.